My name is Elena Cross, and this is the confession I never thought I would make. When people look at me, they see someone composed, someone quiet, someone who catalogs stories and memories like they're artifacts that belong in boxes. What they don't see is that silence has teeth. And mine have been sharpened for years. There was a man once, a man who promised me forever but gave me a coffin instead, not for my body, but for my trust, my faith, my very sense of who I was. His name was Daniel, and if you listen closely, you'll hear how I turned his betrayal into my art, my obsession, and my revenge. I tell you this not because I want forgiveness, but because silence remembers, and silence has finally spoken. It began like all illusions do, sweet, glittering, poisonous in ways I couldn't taste at first. Daniel was not just charming, he was a symphony of everything I thought I wanted. Late night walks through the city where every streetlight seemed to bend toward him, laughter that melted into mine like two songs intertwining, words that felt like promises even when they were lies in disguise. He told me I was his muse, his anchor, his reason to stay grounded in a world that tempted him with everything. And I believed him, because I wanted to. But betrayal is patient. It doesn't arrive like lightning, it seeps like water through cracks you refuse to see. The first time I suspected something was wrong was on a Thursday night. He said he was working late. I believed him. But silence keeps receipts, and my intuition kept whispering in the corners of my mind. So I checked. One phone call. One overheard laugh that wasn't mine. And suddenly the world I thought I knew fractured into 1,000 glass shards. He wasn't working late. He was with her. A woman whose name I never wanted to learn, but who carved herself into my life like graffiti on stone. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I wrote. I wrote every detail, every lie, every shift in his tone that I had ignored, every moment I felt his hands colder against mine. I wrote because I knew that stories outlive people, and I was beginning to understand that this story wouldn't end the way he thought. Months passed, and I let him believe I was blind. I let him kiss me with the same lips that kissed her. I let him think I was the fool in his game. But inside, silence was building a fortress, brick by brick, memory by memory. I collected his lies the way an archivist collects artifacts, carefully, deliberately, until the evidence was undeniable. Receipts hidden in pockets, traces of perfume on his jacket, the rhythm of his absences, the inconsistencies in his words. To anyone else, it might have looked like paranoia, but to me, it was scripture. Each discovery a verse. Each lie a sermon. And I, the keeper of silence, was its most devout disciple. When the confrontation finally came, it wasn't fire, it wasn't rage. It was calm, colder than he expected. We were sitting in his apartment, wine glasses between us like props in a play we'd performed too many times. I looked at him, really looked, and asked the question I had rehearsed in my mind 1,000 times, how long? His silence answered before his words did. That pause, that fracture in his performance, was enough. He tried to laugh it off, to charm his way out as he always had, but charm is powerless when the mask has already shattered. I remember smiling, not the smile of love, but the smile of someone who finally sees the blade in her hand. I told him I knew. I told him I had proof. And for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. That was the moment silence began to sing. But revenge, true revenge, is never impulsive. It's art. It's patient. Destroying him in a single night would have been too easy, too merciful. Instead, I became his shadow. I let him think he had won, that my discovery had broken me, that I was fragile enough to forgive or too weak to leave. And in that illusion, he relaxed. He revealed more. He grew careless. That was when I began to build his ruin, piece by piece. Every lie documented, every encounter noted, every thread pulled until the entire fabric of his life began to unravel. And he didn't even know I was the one holding the scissors. The beauty of silence is that it teaches you to listen, really listen. And in listening, I learned the depths of his corruption. It wasn't just infidelity. It was theft. manipulation. Secrets he thought buried under layers of charm and laughter. He wasn't just unfaithful, he was dangerous, reckless, leaving destruction in the lives of those who trusted him. Friends he betrayed for profit, women he used and discarded, deals made in the shadows. Daniel wasn't just a liar, he was a predator. And predators only understand fear when they become prey. So I became the hunter. The plan unfolded slowly, like the turning of pages. Anonymous letters sent to his business partners with evidence he thought erased. A flash drive delivered to the woman he once swore he loved more than me, the same woman he betrayed yet again with someone else. Photos he never knew I took, bank transfers he thought invisible, recordings of promises he never kept. Every piece of his dual lives converged into a storm, and I stood in the eye of it, calm, unshaken, the archivist of his destruction. He tried to fight back, of course. Men like Daniel always do. But fighting shadows is impossible when you don't know where the hands are that control them. And then came the final act, the night he realized the silence was mine. We met in the same city streets where we once walked hand in hand. Rain slicked the pavement, the lights blurred like tears I never shed. He begged. Not for forgiveness, but for control, for one last chance to rewrite the narrative. But silence doesn't negotiate. Silence doesn't forgive. Silence remembers. I leaned in, whispered the truth he had buried for years, and watched the color drain from his face as he realized it wasn't just about infidelity, it was about every life he had touched with his lies, every soul he had scarred. And I was the echo of all of them. Now he is gone, not by my hand directly, but by the weight of his own sins made visible. His empire collapsed, his lovers turned into accusers, his friends into enemies, his wealth into ashes. I never had to lay a blade on his skin. I only had to let him drown in the silence he created. And me? I walk these streets with the same quiet composure as before. People still see the archivist, the quiet woman with careful eyes. They don't see the storm that once lived in my chest. But if you listen closely, you'll hear it, the silence that remembers, the silence that sings, the silence that devours. My name is Elena Cross. This is not just my story. This is my revenge.